you for joining us for Show Us Your Q-SYS Live Holiday Light Edition. Like Jeff said, I think this is the 5th year we've done this. It all blurs together. So today we're going to take a little look at how I use Q-SYS to help monitor, control, proactively respond to our neighborhood Christmas light show. So I'm going to start it out. And before it blasts, turn it down a little bit. Give you all just a little preview of what we're talking about here. 12 acres burning, a neon sign, 100,000 stars in the dark. Oh, they ignite. The music pounds, the lasers scream. This ain't your grandma's Yuletide dream. Lucy Depp Park lights. Oh, they shine. They shine. Dancing to the beat of rhythm divine. Lucy Depp Park lights. Brighter than the stars. They're the fireworks of Christmas. Seen from Awesome. So, as our wonderful song stated, this is... Oh, come on, PowerPoint. There we go. So, this is the Lucy Depp Park Light Show. So, we're here in Columbus, Ohio, just on the northwest side. It is 9 houses. It's about 12 acres that we light of woods. So, you can see a lot of it is trees wrapped. We do have some fun things that you'd see on a more traditional show. So there's different props everywhere. We'll talk about the tunnel in just a second that we build. But it's about a half-mile loop. People come in, drive through. We broadcast the music over the radio. And it is all pixel controlled. So there's 353,000 channels. We're up about 36,000 over last year. The way we pull this off is there are 28 little teeny computers. I got one sitting somewhere around here. But they hit little breakout controllers that look like this little guy here. There's 200 boxes of these out in the woods. So that allows us to control every single bulb on every single tree. And it takes a lot of stuff to support. So this year there's about 110 network devices. We added about 30. We'll talk a little bit about a good chunk of what those are tied up in the power monitoring stuff that we're doing. This runs from day after Thanksgiving through about the first week in January every year. We average, we'll talk a little bit about attendance, but about this time of year, we're averaging 1,500 to 1,800 cars a night, car passes. So we measure right from the fence here as a car passes. That's another fun thing we did this year we'll talk about. The cool part about all this, we pick... the neighborhood has a 501c3 that puts this on. We pick a different local charity every year to donate money to. So this year we're doing a group here called One Dublin. They provide basic essentials for families in need in the local school district that we're in. They have a shop they can go to. It's a really cool organization. Over the 9 years we've done the show, we've raised well over $100,000 for different nonprofits. So it's a cool way to be able to give back to the local community as well. There we go. So, like I said, these are all pixels. We switched at about year 3 to this. We can control every single one. Every single one has a little computer chip in it. It strips off the red, green, and blue value and moves it along. So there's roughly 117,000 pixels out, mostly wrapped around trees. We do have them on different stuff. The first question we always get is how long does it take to put it up or take it down? And so we every year we leave probably about 80% of it up, and then there's certain things that we just take down every year. So, like I mentioned, our tunnel. This is sort of this is one of the cool things we added this year. We actually have a 20-foot tall tunnel that you can drive through. It's made up, I forget the exact number, somewhere about like 15,000 pixels on this. So we had to bring in a boom lift. Each one of these posts is 20 feet in the air. You can see we've got the pixels on steel cables, so they cross the road, they go down the road. There's 2 strands here. We're going to add another 1 or 2 next year up there. There's candy canes down it, so we've nicknamed it Candy Cane Lane. There are these really cool triangular spheres. It's really, really cool, the effects you can get going up and down it. It's about 200-300 feet long you drive through. No, it's probably even longer than that. It's a good chunk at the end. But that's one of the fun things. So every year we try to add something new. We built a smaller tunnel last year. This year we really went all out with it. So this is actually like 2-inch box trussing going up for it. So first part we got to do when we do this is how do we make the lights turn on? So we have a whole slew of different controllers. You can see these 2 on the left locally output to the lights themselves, whereas these ones on the right use that little breakout board I had. So each one of those cat jacks wires out to a separate box that has one of these differential receivers and a power supply in it. From there, we're able to then plug the lights in. So we can go about 20-30 feet from a pixel port. That's why we don't just have tons of these stacked up. We also, you can daisy chain these differentials. We don't do that a ton. We do it in some places, but you can see this large board here on the right. This is what we have a lot of. This is the Culp K64. So we have 8 of these. We also have 10 K40s. So the 40 porter, and then we're transitioning to 64 porters. So we would have actually added more controllers this year, but instead we've gone for higher density. All of these have a little BeagleBone computer on them, and they're their own. They're a computer running Linux and running a piece of software called Falcon Pi Player. So this is what it looks like. This is our main player, and this is what we interface with from Q-SYS. So this player has a really amazing API, and then we'll show some of the fun stuff we're doing beyond just monitoring it, but actually interacting with it during the show. We also have a lot of network. So like I said, there's about 100 network devices. We have to span all 13 acres with network. So this year we did a lot to help support some of the projects. It's the first year we actually really blanketed the area in Wi-Fi. Typically in the past, we've just done point-to-point network. So you can see right up here, this is Ubiquiti AirMax antenna in either corner. Yes, we just sort of ratchet strap them to a tree because it's temporary. So this year we added a ton of Ruckus outdoor access points. We also have some indoor ones that are just mounted in these enclosures. So each house has a AirMax antenna to give it uplink. They all go back to a common antenna. And then breaks out, has a local switch, usually has a local access point for it, and then that wires out to the different controllers. So, and as you can see, even though this antenna is, probably 1,500 feet away through the woods, we're still pulling like 213 by 240. So this is very wide bandwidth, very high, very wide bandwidth, but we get very high speeds through it. So one of the big things we added this year, and this is just the start of what we're doing with it, is power monitoring everywhere. So if you joined us last year, we were just starting to play around with putting these Shellys are little, I think they've gone up a little bit, but about $25 power controller. So it has a web server, it has APIs, it can talk MQTT. And what these do is they allow us to not only switch the power to the controller, but also monitor. So it gives us live readings of the power draw. So any localized controller like this, we're building them natively into the controller. The bigger controllers that have the breakout boards, those are all PoE powered. But then we actually have, anytime we connect to power outlets, so whether it be out here in the woods, on the side of somebody's house, we have one of these Shelly. We basically splice them in line in a triple tap. There's roughly 20, at least 20, that we've added so far, and there's more that we're planning. But we've got at least, I think, probably about 90% of where everything connects, so that we can start getting some good data on actual power usage. So, and here you can see this is where we're logging a lot of this data, so we can actually see here is the show running during the night. After the show runs, we go to blue lights, so you can see the draw for blue lights, and then you can see it drop down, and this is all the different controllers reporting in. We can see amp draw, we can see voltage. We're logging that in a database, but we're also pulling that stuff into Q-SYS. So we went over the controllers, how we play back the show. We got to write the show. So every year we write a custom show. We use a piece of software called X-Lights. This is what it looks like. It's a timeline. It sort of reminds me of, Premiere or some type of video editing software like that, but we're doing lighting design to a timeline. So we mix our soundtrack, we bring it in, we have to sit and divide out the beats. That's usually the longest part of this. And so you can see each song we have has its own section of beat markers. It's a manual process of marking out the beats, and then we actually draw in the lights. And we're able to do that because we have the entire neighborhood 3D mapped in here. So everything that we add into a 3D representation, and that way we can actually see it when we design it, and it when we draw effects across everything, it all flows there. This map has taken years and years to make. It's a very tedious process, but it makes it a lot easier when we program. And here you can see, here's an example of, this was last year, but it hasn't really changed much, what it looks like. So between my neighbor and myself, we spend hundreds of hours sitting and programming the lights. So once we get everything up and going, then you got to program every single beat of every single song. We do use things like grouping it together to make it a little easier, but it's countless. It's probably about 100 hours between both of us to produce an 8-minute show. So you can see as we run it, we get a top-down view, we get the 3D view. What we've learned is sometimes it looks great on the computer and it doesn't look great outside, and sometimes you get happy mistakes and something that doesn't look that great on the computer looks amazing outside. So as part of this too, we spend a lot of time going out and watching it. And when you have 8 minutes and you got to watch it from 15, 20 different vantage points, that consumes a lot of time. Towards the end of the show, we spend hours just driving around watching the show. So when we get in the playback, this is where we start bringing in Q-SYS. So one of the things Q-SYS allows us to do is actually run redundant head-end players. So the whole show comes from these two Raspberry Pis right here. They're both running simultaneously at the same time, and then Q-SYS allows us to flop between both of them. Those connect USB into either an IO USB bridge, or the secondary one connects to an Undie USB, which is an older Aterotech box. We finally, after how many years have I had Q-SYS with this? I don't know, 7, 8. Finally, after about 7 or 8 years, we finally hit the limit of the Core 110 that we were using. So we had to bump it up to Core 510 this year. So everything runs off of 510. It's USB in from the show players. We also tie in, you can see we've got a two-way radio here for control. We use that a lot more in the past. We still have it, and we still do use it sometimes. But I'll show you a different way we came up with control. But that's doing DTMF decoding. So if somebody sends a DTMF sequence into Q-SYS decodes it and then controls the lights. We've also got in here, we've got a Synapse Dante monitor, which allows us to listen to the show. There's also a VM host in the back that's running vCore and a bunch of different Linux virtual machines that we use to drive everything. And we've got an FM tuner down here. So this FM tuner actually allows us to listen to what we're putting out to make sure we're getting it. And we'll look at that on the Q-SYS side.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
We have a question.
Yes.
Does USB input cause audio delay?
Not perceivable. We haven't noticed any real delay with it. Pretty much, and there are ways you can offset it inside Falcon Pi Player if there is an issue, but I've never noticed it. Especially like with IO USB bridge, because it's QLAN, there's, it's the fixed Q-SYS latency. There's probably a little bit of decode time, but Falcon Pi Player is really, it's built to either run on a Pi, but most people run it with a USB sound card, so it's really good about keeping it low enough latency you don't notice.
Excellent.
The bigger issue we run into latency is a lot of cars have DSP running on the cars these days, and so individual cars may have some latency. Or I had a neighbor who had Sonos at their house and didn't realize the latency on that till we brought a stereo over and showed them the light show actually was in time to the music. And then the other side of this is where we broadcast it from. So we have primary and secondary FM transmitters here. Those connect to QIO ML 2x2, so that was one thing we upgraded this year. It used to be an IO frame. When I went to 10.0, IO frame's no longer supported, so I had to swap it out with a spare QIO I had. So that feeds out. It goes into some TXA2Ds to convert it from balanced to unbalanced, and then it goes into one of these. It goes into both transmitters, and then Q-SYS will decide which transmitters use based off what we get on the receive side. Network-wise, everything on the Q-SYS network is all Cisco 3650s. Out at the edge, we're using a lot of Netgear GS110s. They're sort of the easiest, cheapest managed switch we can buy in bulk off eBay. So let's dive into the Q-SYS side. So here is our Q-SYS file, and it's going to be a lot of the same thing. So we'll do a quick recap for those who haven't seen what we do before. How we have it is we sort of have it drawn out almost like a flow diagram. So we have all the devices. We run them all into monitoring proxies so that we can use Reflect and Core Manager to be able to provide alerting on it. And then they all run into this SNMP PoE controller. So we'll start here with our FPP. So every one of those 28 show players has a script here that's running, and this is using their API. So we can see what's playing on the player, we can see what time it's at, we can see what volume the player's at, we can see what playlists are in it. This notification playlist here is used when we send notifications within Q-SYS. We can get some information about the player, about the memory, about disk usage, all that good stuff. We can back up the player, pull the JSON backup from it. We can flip it between being a remote player or a player. So the player sends out the sync messages between them. And you can see we can manually turn on and off multi-sync. That's really important for when we do our failover system. We can see what's scheduled on it. And then we can also flip it into test mode. So if I flip it into test mode, it'll just flip between red, green, blue, or I can manually choose a color here. So we've got 28 copies of this script. We use notifications to control them in mass, and I'll sort of show in a little bit where we do that at. But that's our FPP integration. There's other things like access points that we're just doing basic pinging on. The AirMax antennas, I'll show when we get to the head end, but you can see we're actually pulling down the signal level, the uplink speed, downlink speed. All of that runs into our PoE controller script. So this is talking SNMP to the switch. And what we can do is we can actually see what ports have link, how long they've been up, what their PoE status is, and if we want them to auto reboot or not. So this switch, a lot of these are locally powered devices, which is why we don't have auto turned on. But the idea is if our status that's wired in, so we can see all the statuses get wired into their corresponding port. If the status goes into a fault, this starts a timer, and after 30 seconds, if it's in fault, it will just automatically turn the PoE off and turn it back on. This solves a lot of the problems. This year, knock on wood, the controllers have been rock solid. Like, we haven't had them locking up, haven't had them dropping and everything. In the past, we had a lot of issues where they would lock up or they'd drop from the network. They'd still actually receive the sync packet, but you couldn't talk to it on the network. This fixed it all for us. So this is sort of the progression when we started tying this all in with Q-SYS. It started as I wanted a way to tell me when a controller dropped offline. I used to have to sit in my window, look out the window, go, oh, there's a portion of the woods that's dark. I should go walk out and unplug it and plug it back in. So then we went, okay, let's make them PoE. Then we could go into the switch. Then, hey, let's add Q-SYS to tell us when it goes offline. Then this final step was, let's go a step further. If Q-SYS already knows it's offline, I already know I need to reboot the PoE. Just do it for me so I don't have to do it myself. So that's where... that's why we use managed switches everywhere for this. So we can see this is just one of the multiple managed switches we've got. And it gets broken out. So, like, for example, this is my neighbor who has a large portion of the woods. So we break it out in logical sense. So there's one main antenna that hits here. We have a second area off an antenna. And you can see there's a lot of players just sitting there. We go out to the woods. We've got an access point. All of those, we take the status off everything and run that into an overall status combiner. And this gives us the status for his house. And so this just multiplies over and over and over out to each house. So some houses are more simple than others. This house just simply has a power monitor and a controller. Other houses have a lot of stuff. So as we go throughout, we just have this over and over. We try to make it nice and easy and repeatable so that we can track it all across all the different houses. So each house has a very similar setup. When we start looking at the head end, this is where we start pulling in a lot of other stuff. So we've got some basic monitoring. We're monitoring the two main switches that power the show. We're monitoring the router to make sure internet's up. We're monitoring UISP. So that is the UISP is the software that manages those AirMax antennas. And so we can see here we've got a text controller running that actually pulls out, and this is talking to the API, running post command, pulling down the status from it, and it provides back the status of all the antennas. So we break this out. In the script, we break it up by antenna and say, hey, here's what device we want. Yeah, I thought I was right. Each one is a combo box and then it has an associated status. So I say, hey, this is a discovered device. I want it to be this one. And now it provides me a status for that singular antenna. So that status then gets wired back to the local page to follow the same signal flow. Here's our two main players here. We're monitoring the status of our MQTT broker. We'll talk about MQTT in a little bit and what we are and aren't doing with it. We had some fun discoveries this year. Monitoring our UPS. We can see here's our different Q-SYS devices. And we bring all that into a head-end status combiner as well as the overall status combiner. So one of the first new things we added this year is we moved a lot of our notification and everything over to Teams. Because we're a nonprofit, we have a grant of a 365 instance, and so we're using a lot of that, and we're using that to tie in a lot of different things we're doing. But the first thing we've got going is we can see I've got a Teams channel here for our status reporting. So right now we're actually sort of double reporting, and we're doing that for a couple reasons. I have Reflect automatically, so Reflect can automatically post straight into a Teams channel with a webhook. So these alert notifications are straight from Reflect. But there are some things that don't have monitoring proxies, or the other way around, where there's some devices we just haven't wired in yet. Trying to manage, it gets really hard once the show opens because I can't touch the designer file at all till 10 or 11 at night because you can't take the show down. So there's some things that just over time, we go back and do some cleanup here and there as we get time. But this is coming straight from Q-SYS. So Q-SYS watches the status monitoring. We also have Reflect watching it. But there's one caveat to Reflect is it doesn't tell you when everything goes back to normal. And that was the big reason we wanted to add this. So you can see here, I knocked a bunch of devices offline last night just to give us some messages. When we finally get back to normal, as we're sitting right now, if we look at our system, this is a really nasty looking status because it's pulling in all the antennas and everything. We actually clean that up for how it's displayed on the UCI, and we clean it up for posting. So if we're getting an OK status, we just say all systems go. That reports into our UCI. And so we can see here we have a visual map that shows the status of everything. So each one of those individual status combiners, their overall status shows up as a dot on here. We have any messages about, so that combined status shows up on here. And then that also reports into the Teams message. So when we get an all systems go, it reports right in here. We're doing this through, I'm using Power Automate for this. You can send a webhook straight from Q-SYS to a Teams channel. However, it requires you to create the action card on the within Q-SYS. Because we're using Power Automate in a lot of other places, it actually was easier to just send an API call to Power Automate and have Power Automate create this, which then also allows us to do some logging and stuff. So you'll see with the car counting is a good example why we run more stuff in there. So keeping going through our head end. This is where we get into the audio. Pretty simple. We flip-flop between whichever player is our primary and secondary. That goes out to our QIO. We also run it through some signal presence so we can see. We have our two-way transmit and receive. So like I said, we can decode DTMF from a radio and use that to send different controls. And these are what... these controls are those notifications that come into the Falcon script. So if we want to turn test mode on or off, start the show, stop the show, the status and car count are just some things we're doing on the radio side. We also have a notification here to do software update on all of them. That is not triggerable by radio, but we leverage that same script for it. So just some basic stuff so that we don't have to go get a phone out, open UCI viewer, get within range of a Wi-Fi access point. We can just do it there. Our FM monitoring, we're basically just watching that FM signal we're receiving. We know that there's a break in the audio within every 10 minutes. And we just run a timer every 10 minutes and look for silence in the audio. If the FM transmitter were to go bad, we would just have pure static 24/7. So this watches that. It'll report to us if we don't have any audio transmitting. It'll also then flip between that primary and secondary FM transmitter. So if the primary is not working, it'll then boot up the secondary. Running down, we have our show hours. So show hours is really powerful. It drives a lot of stuff we do. It is basically a file on GitHub that we go and download every morning. And that has the week schedule. So it tells us what time the show starts, what time it stops, what time we turn off the FM transmitter. So we only, after the show, we run blue lights, and for about an hour, we say a message of, hey, show's over, come back tomorrow. We only do that for about an hour because there's no reason to run that. You know, nobody's showing up at 3, 4 in the morning usually. So we turn it off after about an hour, and then what time in the morning we turn the lights off. We use that. It comes into here, and then a lot of the Q-SYS automation all drives off these different signals for when it is showtime, or it drives. We have other things that reference that GitHub as well. There's our power control for the FM. This is a lot of stuff we went over last year, so I'm just going over it pretty quick. Our player high availability. So this is watching. Are we getting audio from the player? Are we getting command messages from the player? Are we getting status? And we'll flip between that primary and secondary player. So both of them are running the schedule simultaneously. It's just a matter of which one is sending out the sync packets to all the remote players. And that's where we get into some of the new fun for this year. So let me jump back over to PowerPoint. So last year we talked a little bit about, we were trying to figure out how to do some car counting. We tried using an AI cloud-based camera processing service, and the issue we ran into was it missed a lot. So we can see right here in this screenshot, it got 2 cars, but it missed 1, 2, 3. So we were getting every third-ish car. We still got a number that was higher than we thought it would be, but we missed a lot of data on it. So we wanted to come up with a better way to do that this year. What we ended up coming up with is actually just writing some software that runs on a Pi and integrates with a LiDAR sensor. So these are pretty low cost. I think the outdoor one is about $35-40. And so this sensor is mounted on the fence. It shoots across the roadway. It's got a 8 or I think it's a 12 meter range. The indoor sensor over here on the left that we prototyped with, I think had an 8 meter range. If it's further away than that, it just reports back as 0. So it's really simple. If we have a reading of 0, there's no car. If we get a reading above 0 from the distance away the item is, in this case it's the car, if it holds there for more than X amount of seconds or milliseconds, then count it as a car. Wait till it goes back to 0. Make sure it stays at 0 for that amount of time, and keep counting that way. So here is what it looks like in production. So this is the actual Pi that was in that outdoor enclosure. And you can see signal strength's bouncing around right now, but it's showing 0 millimeters because there's nothing in the path of it. It's showing no car present. It actually checks that schedule. So like I said, we use that schedule in a lot of places. This checks the schedule and only counts cars during the showtime. So it will only go active during showtime. And we can see, it checked the schedule yesterday at 4:26. There's been no cars today. Yesterday there were 1,761 cars. This week we've had 10,000, and we've had 26,000 for the whole year. Some of this is stuff that when we were just playing with it is not used anymore. So like our minimum and maximum distance, we didn't need that because just counting when it goes above zero actually was way more accurate. That debounce 250 millisecond, that is where we get the how long it has to stay at zero or not. The cool part is all of this has APIs. So this is running Python. It's coming straight out of a Python script on the Pi, and we can pull that straight into Q-SYS. So here's the Q-SYS side of it. We can see it's pulling in the car count. We have a display here that goes on for our UCI. We have our total count for the season. But one of the other fun things Q-SYS can do for us is Q-SYS can sit and actually break it out for by the hour, so that we know how many cars came each hour. And so that's what we run. I'm trying to see if it's on one of these pins. I actually pull it via script. The script sits and looks at each hour, and when we change the hour, it starts counting over again. And so this posts right into Power Automate. Every hour we send a REST API call and say, hey, there were this many cars in 4 o'clock hour, 5 o'clock hour, 6 o'clock, etc. And that's where we then process it up on the cloud. So that comes in to Power Automate, and we can see our attendance. And so we bring in the Q-SYS data, we post it in the teams. We actually update it in Excel too, so it dumps and keeps us a running log of all the attendance, and then it sends its response back. So if we go and look from here, our attendance here was last night at 10 o'clock. So we can see we actually built a nice little chart in our message. And so here's all that data that Q-SYS breaks down by the hour automatically for us. So we can see we had roughly, during the busy time, about 400 cars an hour coming through. So really cool. It allows us to do that. We can also fully control anything we can control on that web page from the car counter. We can control straight from Q-SYS as well. I've already got a second version of the car counter that's got a lot more cooler web stuff on the front end, but we're not going to switch it out till after the season yet. So the next, and this is probably one of the coolest things we added this year. It's definitely took a lot of our dev time on it. We have always done a scavenger hunt. So people used to just grab a flyer, they'd send us an email with their answers, and then we'd pick one person out of it each year, and they get a shirt from the light show. And it's worked, but we wanted to step it up and have something a little more interactive with the show. So what we did, we moved the scavenger hunt onto our website. Here it's they go in, they fill out this form, and then it will automatically email them. So if they miss some questions, it'll tell them what they missed and say, hey, please try again and everything. If they get it right, it creates them a special link. And so what happens is when they come back to the show, you click the link, it automatically checks to make sure you're actually at the show, because we didn't want somebody figuring out how to do this and just triggering it every couple of minutes. And then it tells them, hey, make sure to keep your eyes and ears open after the show finishes. There's something special. And what it does, it's going to be a little hard to hear, but we'll do a live demo of this too, is in between the show, so after the show's done and it goes to start over again, it actually adds this little special sequence that plays.
Congratulations to our scavenger hunt winner, Kevin.
So it's a little hard to hear the recording audio on this bed, but it actually says their name. It says congratulations to our scavenger hunt winner, in this case Kevin. Plays that little extra special light thing. So, and they can just trigger that straight from their phone. It's really, really cool. So it took a lot of moving pieces to pull that off. And here we go. So the first part, that form they fill out, it's just a Microsoft form. It goes into Power Automate. It does all the grading, creates all the emails and everything. Then the second part of that is we are using Azure to actually host the link they click. So we're using Azure Functions. This allows us to run scripting up in the cloud, and we only get billed for when it runs. And so when they click those links and everything, that's actually a Python script running in the cloud. And what it does is it queues a command, and then Q-SYS comes in every 10 seconds and checks it. So if we come in on the Q-SYS side, we can see right up here where our radio integration is. We basically mimicked what we can do with the radio. And this is polling. Every 10 seconds, we pull to Azure and say, hey, is there a command we need to run? And if there is, we'll see a light go active. So I'm going to try to pull this all off on the fly. Let's open up one of our links. And we're going to let it see our location. Okay, so our deep dive webinar, they've prepared our surprise. If we come back to Q-SYS, there we go. So we see scavenger hunt goes true, and we see we've got deep dive webinar is the name that came through. In Q-SYS, what happens is it starts a whole series, and we actually sort of laid it out really well. I laid out in the script, so we're going to just talk through it in the script side. So the first step is we get notified about our winner. Oh, there we go. So we get notified by our winner. We got to generate the audio. So we get that name in from Azure, and then we actually turn right around and go back out to a script that we wrote that uses Azure text-to-speech services. So it's part of their AI tools, but we can run text-to-speech. So we can input our string, congratulations to our scavenger hunt winner deep dive webinars, and it will automatically dump that right. It'll go, run it up in the cloud, and it dumps an audio file back onto our core. So now that returns back an MP3 for me. I've got it all queued up to go. Now, we don't want to interrupt the show. So once we get that back, we know that it is time to tell Falcon Pi Player to go. So we set an MQTT topic and say, hey, our topic of Showmon Scavenger Hunt, we set it to true, saying, hey, we're ready to play back a sequence. And so if we look at the show player, the first thing when our show loops is we check our scavenger hunt, and if it's true, then we go down to number 2. Otherwise, we skip to number 4. So every time the show starts, it's checking, do I need to play a scavenger hunt or not? So Q-SYS sets that MQTT topic. Our show player reads it in. If it plays it, we need to know a message back from Q-SYS. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to set MQTT from here. So we actually wrote as part of this script, Q-SYS sits and runs a TCP socket server that basically builds us a REST API. And all we care about, because it's internal, we're just looking to see if we get a message. So if we get a message, if we try to connect to this IP, then we get it, and then we make sure that we're getting a get command. Our step 3 is we go. So we set the MQTT. We now know it's time to go. So we go ahead and play the audio file, and we delay it 5 seconds is how long it takes to start. So if we watch this live, we know we'll hover over our loop player here. Actually, we'll hear it out of an Undy Nemo I've got at my desk, but we set that topic true because we ran it, and if everything works, fingers crossed. Yep, so we saw it sent the message.
Congratulations to our scavenger hunt winner deep dive webinar.
So it told Q-SYS waited 5 seconds, played the audio. It's playing this sequence, and then it's going to go right into our show once this is done. And then if we go ahead and just fast forward a little bit, go into the show, and we run the next time, and we skip right ahead. So it's right there, back idle, waiting for it to happen. The other part for us, so that we know, is we can see as people submit scavenger hunts. So we can see here's when I submitted it last night. We get their name, their email, what questions they missed, what comments. So we see live as people are going through and doing it, how they're doing with the scavenger hunt. So we can see Little Billy had some challenges here. But we also get notified when the sequence starts. So when somebody initiates all that, we also get a message saying, hey, Deep Dive Webinars started their magical sequence. The coolest part about all this is, I think to date we've had like 15, somewhere around 15 or so people. The scavenger hunt takes a little bit to do. So we've had about 15 winners who figured it all out. After we get through the rush before Christmas, then we'll promote it a little more and try and get some more. But so far, to date, this has cost us a whopping 7 cents to run all this. The other cool part this has created for us is now we've got an easy way for the cloud to talk to Q-SYS and control it. That's where we realized, hey, we could build a lot more control in this just for us. So if I come over here,
Kevin,
yes.
Kevin, there's a question since you brought up how much this stuff costs.
Yep.
The question is how much power does the whole system draw? And do you know, and who pays the bills?
Yes, I will show that in just a second.
All right, it's coming up, guys.
How much it draws. Yes. And we actually roughly calculate a cost. I don't have a running cost yet, but I'll show that we actually do have all the data to go back and do that. So here is a page hosted on, this is part of that Azure running in the cloud. I can actually remotely control the show from here. So I can hit start show right from here. We can see it sent our start show. And there you go. You hear the show starting right there.
I'm Amy Gunter, and welcome to the 9th year
Stop it.
Show, brought to you
And
by
it takes 10 seconds or so. But this is sort of what replaced a lot of the radio stuff for us, because I can pull this up from anywhere in the world. And now I can remotely control it. And it can scale. I can build a lot of stuff in. We've got a lot of protection on the back end with random GUIDs and everything to make sure if somebody gets really clever and tries to hack this, it's difficult. But this is it's really cool what we can do with it. And then moving into the next year, I think we're going to expand out even more what we can do with here. So let's talk about power monitoring. So actually, let me get back into Q-SYS. And I accidentally blew up all my Zoom. So we said we added all those Shellys this year. What we're doing with those, you can see those are all reporting live here. So every one of these is a Shelly that's running. Because of the number we have, I didn't want to have to write an individual script, copy and paste it out, make sure I go and add it on the Q-SYS side as we add them. I wanted a more scalable way to pull this in. So what we ended up doing to accomplish that is I actually have a vCore running. There's just subscribe. Those Shellys put out MQTT messages. The downside to it, and we'll see if it's going, is it puts out a lot of messages really quick, like all within a couple seconds. There's times, especially when it's really running, that this will just be constantly scrolling. So that's one reason I separated it out onto a V-core. I didn't want to potentially take down the main core. Right now it's running pretty slow, but especially it's because a lot of stuff's in standby. But as the power fluctuates, like when we kick the show on and stuff, you'll see this thing just going crazy. So what we did is I subscribed to every single power monitor there is available. And so as one of those responses comes in, we just file it in a table under its device, and file the wattage, the voltage, and the amp draw. Once about, I think every minute, I go through that table and calculate the total watts. So right now, sitting idle, we're at about 2,400 watts with everything running. When we're running, it's about 6,000-ish watts. I think that was the number we saw last night. There's one house we're still missing some monitoring. We're going to try and get up and running this week so that we can get a number by the end of the show. Every house pays their own electricity. They pay for their lights. They pay for their electricity. They pay for their controllers. My one neighbor, he builds almost all the controllers and handles the physical install. I handle the network side. But everybody just pays their power. But, I mean, you can see right now, what we do is we run it through this second script. I think this runs every couple of minutes because it doesn't change that much. This does an API call out to get the current power rate, and then calculates it out. So we can see right now we're sitting at roughly 18 cents an hour to run this. So it's maybe $1 or $2 a day to run it. It's totally worth it. So this talks over controlling back to the main core. It sends a big, huge JSON string, and then our main core just decodes that and then provides it here in this list box. So that way, as a new power monitor gets added, it just shows up in this table as one of these. I showed that chart earlier. We also bring all that into, of course it logged me out, InfluxDB, which allows us to store all the data so we can actually watch it historically over time. So this is the past 2 days we can see, and you can see this was just this morning. This was right now when we kicked on and started the show. We can see we kicked up the power right there. So this is charting. The nice thing with this is as long as it sees something on that MQTT topic, it starts recording it. So the other big advantage, and this is where I'll jump back in to start wrapping it up. There's a couple cool things the Shelleys have added that we didn't even really think about. They have overcurrent protection. So we live out in the woods. Mice and other animals love to chew power cords. It happens. That will actually kick the Shelley into overcurrent protection and turn it off. So that's something we want to add some automation next year around alerting us when that happens. Right now we can see that it's off, but we just haven't dove into that yet. The other thing is when pixels die, which happens, every light behind it hopefully turns off. However, they have a tendency to go bright white. So you'll get trees stuck all bright white throughout. Most people don't notice it. To us, it's the biggest eyesore ever. And it just sticks out like a sore thumb to us. So the good thing is if you turn the power off and back on, that goes off. And then the tree just runs the pixels up to where the dead pixel is. So one thing we're talking about doing is automating in the middle of the night, just turning power off everywhere, turning it back on. The only real downside is we don't know if a tree's stuck that way, but it's something we're going to play around with for next year. Some other things we're going to play with. This past weekend, we had insane turnout. We had 1,800 one night. And it caused some some major traffic congestion. So we're trying to work out some automated ways. I've already started playing with a couple different traffic-based APIs, but the goal would be to actually check the traffic at a couple places outside of the show. If the traffic is, if we get back that it's congested or however the API reports it back to us that there's major backup, we would automatically change a couple things in the show. So that introduction loop that we normally play, right now it says, hey, go ahead and loop around a couple times. We'll have a secondary one that instead will say, hey, please only turn right, exiting, come back in via the entrance. We'll probably also have some light, some sort of prop at the exit that shows them to turn right. We're going to use Q-SYS for all that. So Q-SYS will go do the API calls, figure out the traffic, and then do the conditional, set flags, just like we did for the scavenger hunt, how we have flags for that. We can run other MQTT flags for, hey, is it light traffic or heavy traffic? And based off that, do different things. So trying to automate that flow so that it's not something manual we have to do. We don't have to think about it. That's our goal. We want this thing to be fully autonomous and just run on its own. Improving some of the action cards. So one of the fun things, because we're doing post directly with the Power Automate, we're not building the action cards in Q-SYS, we can get the response. So right now we get the attendance comes in as a post every hour and just builds over itself. So you can see the progression last night. There are actually ways we can get this message ID back from Teams and then just keep updating the same message every day. So a lot of fun stuff we can play with there. Let's see. FPP scheduling script. So right now the schedule still lives in Falcon. That's the only thing that doesn't tie into that GitHub schedule. I want to expand out our Falcon script to be able to actually read in the GitHub script and then read in the GitHub schedule and then use API calls to build the schedule in Falcon Pi based off that. That way there's one single place we can integrate it. And then finally, I want to build a QRWC front end. So that is a feature we have in beta right now that allows you to build HTML user interfaces. There's a lot of advantage to that on the scaling side. The back end of our UCI is really, really ugly right now. And there's a ton of layers that all could be really simplified with using QRWC. So that's one of my goals for next year is to start rewriting that. It's also our 10th anniversary next year, so I guarantee there's probably going to be 4 or 5 things we haven't even dreamed up yet that come next year this time we'll be showing off. So, yeah. And look at that. I'm right on the hour. So I will open it up for questions.
Yep, we've got one here. Sean wants to know, have you ever had Q-SYS source streaming ACN to control something that didn't need a pixel controller?
Yes, all the time. If you go on communities, I actually have a plugin published on there that will generate SACN from Q-SYS. So I've done, I think what's the most I've done? 28 universes out of a core. It's the biggest limiting factor from having Q-SYS drive it is Q-SYS doesn't have a good front end to design it. A lot of times I'll use snapshots to try and get the built-in ramping from them. If I'm just controlling half a dozen, say, park hands with RGB values all day, no problem with Q-SYS. When I'm controlling 300 or so thousand channels of control from, like I am here, sequencing out 8 minutes of light show, Q-SYS is not the correct answer for that.
All right, we got another one. Victor wants to know, have you ever had any connection issues with the Shelly 1PMs running on Wi-Fi?
No. So the nice thing is they do support redundant networks. So A lot of them based where they are. Um, there's some reasons we run two SSIDs. I put both the SSIDs in. They both end up on the same VLAN. I couldn't tell you right now which one's on which VLAN, but we haven't really had any issues with them dropping offline. They do a really good job of reconnecting. I've got one outside that I use for lighting on my wood burner so that I can tie it in with Home Assistant and stuff. And it's been out there over a year, and I can't remember any time that it's disconnected. So I I'm very weary of anything mission critical on Wi-Fi, but these have done a really good job. The other thing is these aren't, we have one player that runs off Wi-Fi just based off its proximity. I'm trying to see if I can show on the map easily. It controls these 12 trees right down here. It had its own AirMax antenna, but the main AirMax antenna is up here on the house. There were too many trees in the way. We always had reception issues. That AirMax antenna we showed that's ratchet strapped up to the tree is legitimately across the street from it right here. And that one is up enough and has a really clear line of sight. So there's an access point right below it. That controller is connected Wi-Fi. All the others are hardwired straight to their respected AirMax. So we still try to keep everything wired as much as possible. This whole section of woods is hardwired. My whole house is hardwired down here. We try to keep one AirMax per house and do it that way. But knock on wood, they've been pretty reliable.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have at the moment. I know that there are going to be so many more. So, Kevin, how can people get a hold of you if they have more questions?
Yes. So, a lot of this I have published, and I didn't have this. A lot of this going over everything is published online, just lightshownetwork.com. So I've got screenshots and code examples and all sorts of stuff on here. You can find me on communities. I'll make sure I'll post a link later today to this on communities. You can find the recordings from last year if you want to see some of the things we sort of brushed over a little bit are available on here. But yeah, you can find me on communities. Just search Kevin Rhodus. You'll find me everywhere. If you're near Columbus, definitely come check out the show. The website's ldplights.com. I think we run till January 4th this year. So yeah, if that's it for questions, I'll thank everybody for coming out and hope everybody has a happy holiday season. And yeah, we'll catch you all next year.